Hello everyone, I'm Lendy Mulot. I used to pronounce he, him, and I'm a PhD candidate at INSA Rennes and IRISA in France. And the work I'm going to present was done in collaboration with colleagues from the IRISA lab. So I'm going to talk about bimanual interactions with ultrasound media haptics in VR. So we are working with ultrasound media haptic technologies, which are composed of an array of ultrasonic transducers, which are these things right here. And by correctly adjusting the phase for each transducer, we can create constructive interferences at any point we want above the interface, which creates a vibrating point of high pressure, called the focal point. Then, by scanning this focal point along a trajectory, quickly and repeatedly, we can create a tactile sensation that has a given shape, like a circle in this example. And if you've never tried such technologies, basically it feels as a light breeze on your hand, but more localized. So these kind of technologies have gained in popularity because they can generate tactile patterns or even shapes in midair without the need for any wearable equipment. And so it became a very interesting tool to add haptics in virtual reality, as users can interact naturally with their hands without anything blocking or altering their motion. On the other hand, pun intended, bimanual manipulations are omnipresent yet understudied. We know they leverage different cognitive processes compared to unimanual interactions, which often allows for more precise or more efficient manipulations. But this is where we start to reach the limitations of ultrasound media haptics. Basically, the workspace inside which we can generate a focal point is quite limited and therefore not very suited for having two hands. For instance, in this video, the person's hands are really at the limit of the workspace on the sides, and so the quality of the feedback is likely suboptimal. And there has actually been some hardware solutions proposed to increase the workspace, such as by attaching the interface to a robot that could change its orientation or position to follow the user. But all of these mainly focused on unimanual interactions. So here we propose a system and its associated coupling scheme to control two independent haptic interfaces, enabling bimanual interactions. And we also conducted user studies to measure the impact of bimanual interactions and bimanual haptic feedback. So let's start with the setup. So first, we designed and 3D printed a custom support that can hold two ultrasound haptic interfaces right here that are back-to-back. And it also includes a holder for a Vive tracker, which can be used to calibrate its position in the VR environment. So with these two interfaces, we are able to generate haptic stimulation on both sides of the interfaces, which enables bimanual interactions where the hands are facing each other. So in our case, we used an external hand tracker positioned on the HMD in order to know where the hands are and therefore where to render the haptic feedback. But you could probably do something similar using a HMD that has good enough integrated hand tracking. Then it's important to note that by using this interface, we are adding hardware in between the user's hand in the middle of the interaction zone, but we want to avoid having the user hitting the interface. And so we added hand redirection, and specifically we added a constant offset to each hand of 7 centimeters away from the user's sagittal plane. So this way, even if the virtual hands were to come in contact, the real hands would still be 14 centimeters apart. And just to be extra safe, we instructed the participants to avoid rapid movements and to keep each hand to his own side of the workspace. So now that we have a setup that can be used to provide bimanual feedback, we can study the influence of bimanual interaction and bimanual ultrasound media haptic feedback. First, we propose an interaction requiring precise manipulation. So here, the participant has to put their hands on both sides of the bubble, right here, and hold it for a few seconds. The bubble is designed to visually show some deformation when a hand is in contact, and if both hands are in contact while applying too much force, then the bubble will pop. In terms of haptic feedback, we render a haptic circle on the user's palm, and we increase the intensity of the stimulus as the force applied gets larger. So when they initiate contact, they can feel a very light sensation, but near the bursting threshold, they receive the maximum intensity possible with these devices. The participants performed this task under 3 different conditions. One where they received no haptic feedback, so they had to rely purely on visual cues. One where they received haptic feedback on both hands, and one where they received it only on their dominant hand. And note that in the bimanual case, the two circles on the two hands were identical, so we are not providing more information, but we are duplicating it. Then we recorded the duration of each trial, the number of pops, and we also assessed the workload through a raw TLX questionnaire. In terms of objective metrics, we observed no significant performance differences between bimanual and unimanual feedback, while both were significantly better than purely visual feedback. But bimanual feedback really shines when it comes to subjective metrics. So the workload was rated significantly lower when receiving bimanual feedback than when receiving unimanual feedback, which was in turn significantly lower than with no haptic feedback. We also asked participants to rank the three conditions based on overall preference, and here we technically did not get statistically significant differences between bimanual and unimanual feedback, but we had a clear trend with 10 out of 12 participants ranking it as the best. And this is especially interesting as the stimuli on each hands were identical, so we did not provide more information in the bimanual case, but we were merely duplicating it. So the sheer redundancy of the feedback likely facilitates the cognitive integration of the feedback. And this is actually on par with some results of cognitive ergonomics, where similar phenomena have been observed, especially for visual feedback. Then we wanted to explore a different type of interactions, where instead of acting upon an object we see, we merely explored an object we cannot see, trying to understand what kind of object it is. Specifically, we place a 3D object at the center of this box, so it's visible on the video to illustrate what's going on, but it's not actually visible to the user. Then the user can insert one or two hands inside the box to explore the object, and in terms of haptic feedback, we render the intersection between the user's hand and the virtual object, while also highlighting important features such as edges and vertices. And in the end, the user is asked to identify the shape that has been rendered out of a pool of possibilities. They complete the task under three different conditions: one where they explore only one side of the object using a single hand, one where they explore both sides at once using their two hands, and an intermediate mode where the user explores with one hand at a time, but they are free to switch a hand whenever they want. And we ensured that we only used objects that are symmetric with respect to the sagittal plane, so that the task remains totally possible and fair even with a single hand. And in the end, we measured exploration durations, precision, and recall, as well as workload using a raw TLX questionnaire. So for this second experiment, we observed no significant differences in terms of objective performances, with average identification rates around 50%, while random answers would lead to 25% correct results. In terms of workload, again, no significant differences, but still there is a clear user preference for the bimanual interaction, and therefore the bimanual feedback. So overall, here the benefit of bimanual media haptic feedback seem mostly visible when it comes to the user experience. Just as a cherry on top, we implemented some use cases to show how we could apply bimanual media haptic feedback in more concrete scenarios. So in this one, the user can remove some clay from a clay block in order to make a pottery, while receiving some haptic stimulation in the areas in contact with the object. And in this second one, the user is roaming the seas with a trusty and rather cute parrot, while playing a tune using a concertina. And haptic feedback is used here to help them play at the correct rhythm. So to conclude, we proposed to use two media haptic interfaces to enable better bimanual interactions in VR, and we studied how bimanual interactions and feedback impacted the user performances and user experience. We showed that bimanual feedback and bimanual interactions largely improve overall experience, while providing performances that are at least on par with unimanual feedback, and also enabling a whole new range of interactions. Yet this journey is far from over. We plan on improving the system to increase its rendering capabilities and enabling a new range of interaction configurations. Thank you very much.